Don't engage alone. We do this together.
Yeah.
We got it! We got it!
New 52 booklet.
Somebody clip this.
Welcome to Under Two Capes. I'm Jared. I'm here with Teladia Plays. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So today we are discussing Teladia and I's favorite era of Superman, New 52 Action Comics by Grant Morrison and Rags Morales on art with also art by Andy Kubert. So this is the arc that started off Superman when the New 52 first launched. So by
Yes.
all of you listening on audio, the video portion is on YouTube. So we'll be describing the images as we go. But anyway, so Teladia, to start off, what are your general thoughts about Volume 1 of Action Comics by Morrison?
It was very interesting on how they approached Superman in the New 52, right? He was much younger. He was much raw, more brutal as in his early years as the hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't
exactly. In other words,
go
ahead.
He wasn't the old big Boy Scout from the get-go. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, he was a little bit more inexperienced, let's say that. Because remember, at this point in DC continuity, the characters had only been their superhero identities for 5 years, I think, at that point. So this is Superman near the beginning. That's why he doesn't have the suit. The suit comes in much later. So what we see here, and what Britt and I have said a lot about this era of Superman, is that this was attempting to modernize the golden age of Superman. In other words, the more Superman that was maybe he didn't even fly that much. He leapt tall buildings in a single bound, although he flies. He was more of the champion for the oppressed that would save people that were being oppressed and stuff. So we see Superman, and he's basically taking care of a business mogul. And I love this image of there's a security team, and he just completely took them out. He just went right through him. Because what are they going to do against Superman? I also one guy's embedded in the wall, and I'm like, oh God.
It reminds me a bit about Batman. You know how Batman would have been.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of like Superman, but I love this image of the shadow over his head, and then you have the two red eyes. And essentially what Superman is doing here is trying to intimidate the business mogul into taking better care of people. He's holding, he does that thing where he drops someone and then goes and picks them up. Superman in Post-Crisis did this thing where he shot a guy with a gun, went in front of the bullet and caught it and said, next time I won't be here, or something like that. It's really weird. So he catches him, and I love how one of the cops tries to shoot him, and then he shoots Superman. The bullet bounces off him, and he goes, "Are you satisfied?" That's kind of Superman's version of the "not impressed" line from the Snyder Cut. He's like,
"Yeah,
I'm still here." So
it's very. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a very, as you said, Snyder-esque. But I would also implement very Batmanish too, because because remember, Batman doesn't play well with cops in the early years, but Superman, this version of Superman didn't play very well with cops either. He's he's running away from them. He's a vigilante basically to them.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what he started off as, more of a vigilante. And this was kind of shown in Smallville, where So yeah, he shows up in Metropolis, but then he becomes like I think they called him the Blur at one point. So that's essentially what they're seeing here. And remember, we even saw this in New 52 Justice League, the first issue, when it says 5 years ago, before anyone knew what a superhero was. And it's like Batman was being pursued by the GCPD. So was Green Lantern. So here you go here. And basically he's being tracked by also the Armed Forces / Lex Luthor. And essentially, so he saves these people from being hit with like a wrecking ball, but then he's shot with a tank. And then I like where he goes run, and then he just whacks the tank with the wrecking ball. And I will say, I love the way Rags draws like all this military stuff getting like destroyed by Superman.
Yeah.
It's something you don't typically see with Superman. And then he's like shot by a tank. But here's the thing. The military can't do anything because he's protected by the people. So essentially, again, he is the champion of the oppressed, and the people are like, essentially like, if you're going to have to go through us to fight him. And then the cops show up, everyone disperses, and then he runs. And then he dresses back as freelance reporter Clark Kent. Now in this, he doesn't have the suit yet. So it's just his jeans, a cape, and a t-shirt that has the S on it. And then he messes up his hair and puts on the glasses, and there you go. See, here's the thing with the whole Superman secret identity, the hair trick also works, because if he messes it up, puts on the glasses, and then kind of acts like more like a buffoon, that does work for like differentiating Clark Kent and Superman.
Agreed, definitely. It's very interesting of how in the New 52 he messes his hair. It reminds me of the 90s Clark, where his hair was all messed up, and also the new Superman movie where his is the messy hair too.
Yeah, exactly. So then what we have is we meet Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen.
We have to bring it.
We have to. They're in the book. If we're going to talk about Superman, Teladia, at one point we're going to have to talk about this piece of work.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So I'll endure. We'll endure. So then, essentially, they're both kind of doing the same thing, trying to like take down corrupt business people. Except then there's a terrorist attack on the train, and Superman has to like speed in and essentially stop the train, Spider-Man 2 style. Like he lets just run right into him, and he's like, "Argh!" And it nearly, and the bridge gets taken down, but he's able to like stop the train, and then the train keeps going and keeps going. Somehow, everyone on the train is still alive.
That is incredible, right?
Yeah, like look at this. So it stops. It stops here. That's fine. And then it goes through a building, and then like does this weird like snake serpentine thing. Everyone's still alive and no one's bruised. But then again, it's Superman, so there you go.
It's DC, so.
And then General Sam Lane, yes, that's Sam Lane from Superman and Lois, and Lex Luthor devise a plan essentially. So Superman is stopped. He essentially stopped the train from running to the Daily Planet. So they capture Superman. Now, so Teladia, this was alluded in Superman Wonder Woman, actually. So if you remember when they first find Zod, and Zod is being like captured by the Justice Society, Steve Trevor essentially says, because he's a perpetual stick in the mud, he says, why don't you let us take General Zod? I promise you he'll be treated humanely. And then Superman said, oh, I remember specifically how humanely you treat aliens. This is what he was referring to, because he was captured and tortured by the government. Because again, they didn't know who he was. This is what people have to understand. It's like the same way that Henry Cavill Superman was like treated like crap by the people, because he wasn't their hero yet. In their eyes.
Yeah.
He's trying to be the hero. It's not until the end of Volume 1 that he becomes the hero. So this is what I liked about the new 52 Superman specifically, because I got to see how because we've always seen Superman being this great superhero, and everyone's like, hey, Superman, we all trust you. You're the greatest. I never saw how he got there. And even with this, when he's tortured by the government, but he still decides to save us. Yeah, that proves how special this character is.
And you know what's also, when I read this, the first volume, I found it was like really fascinating about how they tortured him, which was like, I was like thinking, wait, it's like total 1930s esque, torture, right?
Because you know what they're homaging? Because this entire run is Grant Morrison homaging the original 1938 version of Superman.
Right. Okay.
Because a lot of this is Superman from the Golden Age, but it's been, for lack of a better term, updated for the for the modern audience, but in a way where it's not like, I hesitate to use this term, but screw it, you know what I mean, woke, not woke, essentially.
Yeah.
So continuing on, I'm going to skip through some stuff. It's just, okay. DC Online has been a real pain in the ass recently, so bear with me, folks. So essentially, Lex Luthor wants to experiment on Superman, maybe even clone him. This is where we get a tease of Bizarro, who won't show up until a later story that Teladia and I are getting to in Snyder Fans Read Comics. But I think it's the issue. It might be the issue we're on right now. I have to see. Or it may already exist. Actually, you know what? It probably already exists. So what happens is, in the actual Forever Evil series, not covered by the Justice League book, because we're only doing the Justice League book, Bizarro. So that's what this is teasing, except it takes a significant amount of time for the clone to grow. That's why he doesn't unleash Bizarro until then, likely like 6 years in the future or so.
That is so weird that 60 years in the future.
6 years, not 60, 6 years.
Yeah, I mean 6 years, yeah. It's a bit weird, right?
It's interesting. It's roughly that much, because you have 5 years from now, and then actually maybe 10 years. See, the new 52 timeline is kind of like not really a timeline. So I'm just estimating based upon like the visual cues. But anyway, so then Lois shows up, and it's basically like, you can't hold him hostage. This guy, he's trying to help us. Then we see Superman being having his X-ray vision, and I like how we kind of see Lex's skeleton. Then he learns that like they have the rocket. There's also like a creature here. It's not Crypto. Crypto actually exists in the new 52.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny, because we noticed in Flashpoint, one of the details in the background is the Crypto skeleton.
Right.
So in Flashpoint, Crypto is not a thing. So he breaks out, wrecks shop, grabs his cape, and finds this is his spaceship that brought him to Earth. He touches it, and it kind of like it like essentially reveals to him who he is a little better. He uses heat vision, and then he escapes. And then we also see that they're teasing like a lot of characters, like Metallo. And then then Lex Luthor is talking to a being in space. I'll give you a hint. A green being who has tried to kill the Justice League. I'm going to make all those puns I want.
Oh my God.
So then we get something really cool. We get a look at New 52 Krypton. And by the way, in the New 52 Superman book, in other words, how it's actually comics and Superman, the first like couple of issues are just leading up to the destruction of Krypton. And we're seeing Jor-El and Laura like sending Kal away. Like Man of Steel.
You're our last hope.
Exactly. It's pretty much that. So then, essentially, again, we're seeing like, there's Crypto. Again, I love the Dire Wolf version of Crypto. I got to be honest. That just looks so badass. Although I appreciate the other versions of Crypto, and that's why with the James Gunn version of Crypto, I'm like, okay, fine. For the version of Superman that he's making, that works. So I'm not really going to complain about that. At least it's tonally consistent. And then we see Krypton is starting to explode, or there's like, oh yeah, there's a coup here. Actually, no, it's not a coup. Brainiac is invading. And then the bottle city of Kandor is bottled. So we just saw that.
Ooh.
Clark
but
wakes up. He's in his apartment. And his apartment is being like raided by the FBI because apparently they think Clark is Superman, but it turns out his landlady knows he's Superman and hid his costume, but she's like not going to tell anyone because he's a friend and he helps the community and stuff. Superman meets his pal Jimmy Olsen, and Lois Lane shows up and is the perpetual stick in the mud. She always will be.
I hate Lois Lane.
Oh, join the club. So Superman continues to save people, and then Brainiac's robots activate. And then we see that like Metallo is hooked up to Brainiac tech. And yeah, go ahead.
Which I find very interesting that it's Brainiac tech and not Kryptonian tech that he's hooked up to.
I would think that's what they were going to go with in the Snyderverse. Like he's like hooked up to whatever like residual technology from like the Kryptonian battle that Lex Luthor had access to after like maybe they would retcon that like Lex stole some Kryptonian tech from like the battle, like a spur blaster or something like that, and reverse engineered like the Metallo suit.
Yeah.
And then we get Superman versus Metallo. For some reason, DC Online is being a little annoying, so I'm gonna go ahead and reload my page. But yeah, so this is one of the most, I think, interesting takes on Superman, and I think it does a good job with modernizing the character, but keeping it still consistent with who the character is, because that's always like, what's the word? That's always like a balancing act that a lot of these creatives have to make.
And you know, for the time when it came out, which was 2011, I think it lives up to expectations.
Oh yeah, this was one of the top books at DC, and you know what's kind of interesting? When you talk to Superman fans about what books would they recommend for a Superman origin story, in other words, what version of the origin, a lot of them say this because it's very consistent with the way Superman is at the time when he arrives in Metropolis, and you get to see him grow into the hero that he's meant to be. See, that's why I originally, back in the day, thought Superman was kind of dweeby and stuff and like not as cool as like Batman, because I thought I was supposed to just accept. He shows up and then, okay, everyone all of a sudden trusts him and everything. That's it. But when I see the journey and the build up to it, I'm like, okay, I got this. Now I understand the character.
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, this has been the best origin story, I think, until I read the next origin story.
Yeah, we'll see. So, so a lot of these robots are like Brainiac robots that he's fighting. You notice how the T-shirt has been like
changed to white.
It's been changed to white. So I think what happened is that his old shirt got like shredded, so this was all he has to spare. The Brainiac robots are like attacking, also by Metallo, and then by Metallo was in Superman Wonder Woman Volume 2, if you remember.
I remember.
He was dating Lame, and then the city of Metropolis is bottled by Brainiac, as you can see. And then here's Brainiac. I kind of like this more bug-like design for Brainiac. It's very unique compared to the other versions of Brainiac we've gotten in the past.
Yeah, he's bug-like, but I prefer the one from Superman Brainiac.
True. I think with this one, they were going more with the Tim Burton design for Brainiac, because if you remember from that documentary about Superman Lives, he was going to be more spidery.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He was supposed to be spidery.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Grant and Rags were like inspired by that. They just said, let's do that. I think that'd be fun. Plus, remember, Brainiac looked different even in Superman Wonder Woman. I mean, this is just an early version of Brainiac.
Or give it a nod to Brainiac, Superman Lives.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can see where you're... At least it's based on a previous established version. I can do that even if it's like something I'm not used to. Then you see the Superman shirt is getting torn up, and this is the thing. This is why he needs the suit. And basically he tells the military, so that's all that's left in Metropolis. So when Brainiac bottles the city, just a crater is left, and you can see there's like water flowing in from like the sewage and stuff. Like it was like scooped up like you scoop up a plant. Now, I love this cover of like inside the Metropolis, and there's Superman looking at them. So Superman takes off. He goes so fast, his boots burn off, kind of like Ezra Miller, the Flash in the Snyder Cut. He goes into space. Yeah, apparently he can't breathe in space, or maybe he doesn't know if he can breathe in space. The point is, he gets into Brainiac's ship. Well, actually, he gets in there because like he tries to break in, but Brainiac like shocks him and then brings him in.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like Superman Unchained, the movie, or like Unbound.
Yeah,
Unbound is the movie.
Unbound. Yeah,
Unbound, where he's captured by Brainiac, and then he like breaks out. He breaks out. He finds, so among other things, he finds like a Kryptonian suit. Now, if you notice, it's just blank, right?
Yeah.
Because what happens is, so he decides he needs another suit, and this is inside the bottling from Brainiac, and then so Lex Luthor, being the
Evil
manipulative
genius.
dude, yeah, he kind of is. He tries to like manipulate it for his own interest. Superman looks in and sees like the Battle City. He's attacked. And then essentially it's like everyone's cheering for Superman, and he can hear that like he's supposed to be their hero. He puts on the suit. And by the way, see, it's not armor. It's an actual, like, for a better term, cloth suit. People just think it's armor because of the lines. And you notice, so the armor suit apparently reads Kryptonian DNA and then morphs into like the coloring and the House of El sigil.
Oh, when I saw that, I was like, wait, how did he put it on? Like,
I think he just throws it on. Or remember, it's nanotech. So what I think happened is he still he threw it on, or like because the way it's stored later on in the series, and we see this kind of in Superman Wonder Woman, it's stored in a small S sigil he has that's attached to his chest, kind of like Iron Man's arc reactor. So what he does is he activates it via thought, and it materializes around him. But it reads Kryptonian DNA, so it affixes what the House of El like uniform would have looked like. So he becomes, and this is the origin of the Kryptonian armor. He kind of gets it from Brainiac, and then we get a better look at alien Brainiac, and that I like.
he looks like the Brain from Pinky and the Brain.
He does look like the Brain, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the origin for that. But all right, so fun fact, they kind of play up that the reason why Krypton blew up, and at least the Krypton show, I'm not sure. I know there's a version of the comics where this exists, where the reason why Krypton blew up is that Brainiac showed up, bottled Kandor, and just left. But the bottling of the city destabilized Krypton's core, so it exploded. That's like a version of it. I know a version of the show, and I'm fairly certain there is a comic version of it where that's why Krypton blew up.
There's multiple versions out there, but the one I know is like when Krypton gets exploded, was so thanks to Brainiac.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that's why. So essentially, this is the big fight: Superman versus the Collector of Worlds. But Brainiac also fights through Metallo. That's why his eyes are glowing green. And it's essentially it's a big fight, and I gotta say, I really love Rags Morales' art with this because it's very dynamic. It's very inspired by Man of Steel. In fact, I'm kind of hearing the Man of Steel music from like the Zod versus Superman fight in Metropolis at the end of the movie in this.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sounds like that. And then we even see Superman gets like knocked back, and apparently his suit changes color. And like logo.
That's cool. That was cool
design. Yeah, I think it's because he wasn't focusing, so it's like he has to focus. And then he fights Brainiac. He goes, "You're not collecting any more worlds. You're done. You had your chance." And then he fights Brainiac, and then defeats him. And then he sees like he defeats him by throwing like one of those crystal shards into Brainiac's brain, if you will, and then the shards like explode Brainiac from the inside out. And
Which
then
sounds
he's like,
the
yeah, go ahead.
which sounds like the fortress, like how that expands.
Exactly. So, and by the way, that was one of the cool parts of Superman and Lois, where he tosses the crystal in the ocean, and then the fortress just grows from that. So then this is where we discover he gets his powers from the sun. He's like completely out of it. He crawls over, and then all of a sudden he's rejuvenated in the sunlight. And he goes, okay, this is cool. And now he has control of Brainiac's little skull ship thing. And then Metropolis is restored. And by the way, John Henry Iron Steel, apparently in this, as with Superman and Lois, he's not linked to the death of Superman. Which, again, I wouldn't be even surprised if Superman and Lois is partially based on this run.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised too.
At least this run actually respects the death of Superman instead of like using it for only 2 episodes.
You're never gonna let that go, are you?
No, because they marketed it as that storyline the entire season. But it was like just 2 episodes. And then Superman leaves the Daily Star and gets a job at the Daily Planet. And then this is when Superman is like accepted as the superhero we know he is. And he gets interviewed by Lois, and he goes, "Do you have a place to go to be alone?" You could say his Fortress of Solitude.
Yes.
And then he goes back to Smallville, and okay. A significant departure from post-crisis Superman was that in this universe, what happened was John and Martha Kent were driving Clark to a prom. And they were telling him, and they basically enumerate this in Doomsday Clock. And they were telling him, you have to be careful with these powers. You can't exactly be very open with them. Kind of like Jonathan in Man of Steel. And this was because there wasn't like an example of superheroes beforehand because the JSA was not existed. But we'll discuss that when we cover Doomsday Clock. So anyway, they get into a car accident and die. So Jonathan and Martha Kent are dead in this continuity in the main timeline, which I get why they did it. I do kind of like having them alive though.
Right, yeah.
That's what I will say. I kind of prefer them being alive. But that's just me. And he turns into Superman, flies off. All right, so I want to see real quick. Let me go back. I want to see if we see materialize. We do in Superman Unchained, which you may have to cover that. He like takes off, goes to his Fortress of Solitude, and he goes, okay, and now I have my own fortress. Then we see Dinosaur Island and stuff. Then we see, so that's the ship leaving Krypton. Okay, so here we go. The planet's exploding. Jor-El takes the cape, wraps it around baby Kal-El, puts him in the ship, and launches him. But not before he also gets a warning from General Zod, who will show up later in the run past Volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
Zod tries to escape. Krypto charges after him to like protect him, and Krypto is stuck in the Phantom Zone. That's why Krypto does not show up until much later.
Oh, that's a wait. When does he turn up again, Krypto?
I don't know when exactly, like what issue, but he shows up when Clark is an adult.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's there because in the Phantom Zone, time kind of stands still. So it's like what's like 30s or so years for like our reality is like a couple of seconds maybe in their reality. Let's say I may be over exaggerating, but that's like the best way I can like express it. They put him in the ship and he takes off as the planet explodes. Then we see the rocket gets covered in those crystals as like I guess armor, and then it crashes in Smallville. We also learned that that's like Jonathan and Martha Kent wanted to have a kid. That's like the big thing in this universe. And they kind of played off of this in the parody Brightburn. Yes, I called it a parody because it's the parody of Superman.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Then they find now normally they take his rocket ship and bring it with, and like put it in the back of their truck and bring it with them back to Smallville. In this, they just take him and leave the rocket. That's how the government gets the rocket. And then essentially he like the military loads up the ship, and then Superman finds it and goes, "Hey, I'll come back for you later." He comes back for the ship, and it starts to grow into like a crystal thing. And then what's kind of cool is that then we get Superman returning with the Legion of Superheroes, which kind of gets confusing considering the fact that later on it'll be retconned into the new 52 that the Legion does not exist. But I'm like, wait, is that the Legion? I mean, I'm fairly certain that's the Legion. It could be like it's... What I think is probably happening, it's like this was the original plan, like to have them in there. But Grant Morrison is the Legion. But Grant Morrison was like, okay, so I want to put this in there, but then DC was like, no, we're not going to have it in there. So because they were trying to like change stuff in continuity, but it's kind of weird. Or I think what they did is they even like wiped himself from Okay, so what they did is the Legion have a rule that no one can know, that Superman can't know his future, because then the future might change. So whenever they leave, they wipe his memory of them ever being there. And then they arrive back in their time. We see it's like a hellhole. And then so Superman is kind of dying because he like has kryptonite in him. And he goes, no, I'm not going to give up. He's healed. And then we see him like with the Legion. So, and then there's also a backup story involving John Henry Iron Steel fighting Metallo. What do you think of the John Henry Iron Steel costume in the new 52? It gets changed later.
It feels Iron Man-esque, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, this was like a couple of years after Iron Man came out that this came out. And John Henry Irons is kind of Iron Man. They modified the costume in the new 52. I think actually in Doomed, because he like gets essentially a liquid metal suit essentially instead of like this, because he started off in Doomed having this, and I remember saying he should have a helmet at the very least, because the amount of time these superheroes get like hit in the head, that's not gonna like work out for them that well. And then he fights and then he defeats Metallo. More like backup stories of Steel, but essentially that's new 52 Action Comics. That's essentially what I want to cover. So all in all, how do you rate this volume?
It's a solid 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Me too. I enjoy it. I think it's my favorite origin for Superman as well, because it goes back to his roots, like his very, 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 very early, like his 1938 like roots of Superman. Says here's who the character was supposed to be according to Siegel and Schuster. Let's bring him back to that. And by doing that, they actually managed to make the Golden Age cool again, I guess. And that's really what the new 52 was, and why it was so popular. Because it was bringing back the golden age, more of the Golden Age sensibilities. The more like closed-minded fans didn't like it because they apparently think that the DC universe started post-Crisis.
Mind you, this is a New York bestseller. That's another thing.
Yes, it is. It was routinely a bestseller. I think even it was a bestseller in terms of comic sales too. It was one of the highest, at least at first. A lot of these new 52 books started off good and kind of petered off in some direction stuff. But you know what? I definitely enjoyed it. And then you see a little bit more of like the potential of like this more socially minded Superman dating Wonder Woman. Because remember, this is the Superman that dates Wonder Woman in 5 years.
Yeah.
And also will fight Darkseid in 5 years and meet Green Lantern and Batman. Because, okay, so what happens, so with the way the timeline works, so here's the problem with the Superman books in this era. So the Superman title, the one called Superman by George Perez, as a matter of fact, was taking place in the modern day around the time of the Justice League book. This is taking place 5 years in the past. Here's the problem with that. Grant Morrison was making like stuff in Superman's past that George would not reference, and vice versa. And when you're writing a book that's in the past, it kind of has to be in sync with the book that's taking place in the modern day.
You don't want it to conflict with each other. That's another thing.
Yeah, that was the issue. Because on its own, this is fantastic. Combined with the Superman book, there are some great parts in it, and there are some parts where like it needs some work. Particularly ironically when Dan Jurgens is added to the title. Yes, he wrote New 52 Superman, which in a way is like, it's like having Tom King write Wonder Woman. No one wants that. Pun intended.
Yeah.
But all in all, so let's give your general thoughts on this version of Superman.
Great iteration of Superman, interesting origin, and the fact that we very Man of Steel-esque. Also, like this version of Superman doesn't have no tidy-whities, right?
He doesn't have the trunks. That is right.
Yeah,
and the suit looks better without the trunks.
Yeah. And furthermore, I like his hairstyle. I dig the hairstyle.
Yeah, the more slick back.
Yeah, the more than, oh, I've got the Superman S on the hair. Like this version, it was like scruffy and everything, and I really like that. I like his Clark as well. The Clark Kent, version of Superman. I actually really like it, and I also really enjoy the fact that this version of Superman also introduced Brainiac and Metallo in Volume 1, which we've never had before. Right.
Yeah.
Action Comics.
That's a good one to introduce to like be like the first villain before you bring in like a massive villain like Brainiac, because it's grounded but still fantastical with Superman. So if you were to like make a movie of this, it kind of is easier for the general audience to like jump on the fact, okay, a cyborg, we know what that is.
Yeah, so it's like, but I said Brainiac, Jared. You said Brainiac.
No, but I'm saying you also talked about Metallo.
Yeah, Metallo. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Metallo.
so I was saying Metallo's a good villain to introduce before Brainiac, because like this book does, you can use Metallo to set up Brainiac.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So all in all, definitely one of the great books. And as Jared would say, as the comics lord himself knows, they should take inspiration from this from different media.
They
need to make a video game out of this.
Can you imagine the video game is that like legit just that volume?
I can imagine.
You start off in the jeans and t-shirt, and then you have to earn the suit.
I can just imagine that. Yeah,
that would actually be really cool. And like we said, it starts off with like a regular villain that you wouldn't expect, and then you elevate to like this world-ending threat.
So, Jared, what do you think of the character before we wrap up?
This version of the character, I love it. This is my version of the character because again, hang on. This was the version of Superman that was like prominent when I came in as a character, as a DC fan. Because remember, I started reading comics for the first time in like 2013, I would say. So New 52 was still very much like the norm. So this was the Superman I was used to. In fact, that was back in the day. I would only that was before I was going to a comic book store regularly. So I would go to Barnes and Noble and just buy trades. It's like my Barnes and Noble has this epic comic book area. It was like Green Lantern, Superman, Batman. Then I saw Superman, Wonder Woman, and I was like, yes. Because that's what got me into this, because I was like, okay, I saw that this version of Superman is dating Wonder Woman. Where's a book that has that? So I'd be flipping through books in Barnes & Noble saying, okay, there's a reference to it. I'll buy Trinity War. But
Okay.
but yeah, so that was the more grounded version of Superman that I liked. So it's very cool, and I very much enjoy that version of the character because it's more grounded, it's more relatable, and I like a Superman with a little bit of edge to him. I got to be honest. That's just me. I kind of enjoy it.
Okay. So, is there anything else you want to add?
Not really. So I think that's a good place to leave it. Drop in the comments below your thoughts on New 52 Action Comics Volume 1. What your favorite parts were. What do you think of the suit? Be civil, or I will remove your comments. Teladia, where can we find you, and what have you got coming on the channel? Bear in mind, this is coming out on Friday.
So you guys can check me out on YouTube at Teladia Plays. What I got coming up on YouTube is I'll be doing a live reaction to Superman and Lois on Tuesday with Jared as per usual. And then Wednesday, Snyder Fans Read Comics, as we're covering not only Absolute Wonder Woman, but we'll be covering New 52 Forever Evil. So we'll be continuing on with that.
Yeah. So as for Comics League, tonight, by tonight I mean Friday night, is the 4-year anniversary celebration of Comics League. So I'm really excited for that. We're going to do a big stream. We may even go live earlier than 10 p.m. so more people could show up. And we'll be talking about our favorite memories, because this was a big year for Comics League. Like, this is the biggest year in the channel's existence. So it's very important that we celebrate it. For movie night, we're talking about Ghostbusters 2016. And then Britt and I are going to compare Super Wonder to Batman Talia and Batman and a Batcat. And we'll be going on rants about Tom King, because what else is new? And yeah, that's it. So, and this is very appropriate for this one. Stay heroic, everyone. And remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lame. She belongs to General Zod. Zois and Max about for life. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.